Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we have got another interview for you and we are joined by the incredible, illustrious, fantastic, brilliant Dr. Sarah Wilson. Dr. Sarah, you are all things amazing, but would you be able to let our wonderful viewers know what your main area of study and what your main area of research is?
Sure, so thank you for that really gorgeous invitation. I'm not sure I quite live up to all those descriptors, but my area of research is broadly what's referred to as cognitive neuroscience and clinical neuropsychology. And I guess that covers or intersects with mental health and well-being. So that's really, I guess, what I'm here to have a chat about with you today and Fantastic. What's going on in this space.
I guess the first question I've got to you, and we've kind of asked this question to everyone, is what does self-care mean to you?
That's a good question and a really good time to be asking the question given, you know, the past 2 years and what we've all been through together. But for me, self-care is actually quite a complex idea and it's multidimensional. So it's got many different parts. And maybe I could just walk you through that a bit if
I would love that.
Allow me to do that. We can think about self-care in terms of the physical aspects. I mean, that's pretty obvious. Taking care of your physical well-being, your physical health, exercise, diet, but also this part of physical well-being that we call interoception or interoceptive awareness. That is, you know, paying attention to the signals that are going on inside your body. If you've got pain, making sure you don't ignore it, you go off to the doctor and you get it checked. You know, so really taking good care of your physical health. So that's one part of self-care. But then there's the mental part of self-care, right? And that's kind of divided into two bits. There's the emotional well-being and emotional self-care, and then the cognitive. And by emotional we mean, you know, all those feelings and moods and experiences that we have, paying attention, checking in with ourselves. How are we going emotionally? Are we managing okay? Are we paying attention to our emotions? Because, you know, emotions are cool. They're like data. You know, they're telling us important things, what's salient in our environment for us right now, what's, you know, what's affecting us, what's making us think or behave in particular ways, and they're really worth paying attention to. So, you know, there's been a tendency, I guess, or there is a tendency for people to ignore emotions a little bit and push through or carry on, and even some of those interoceptive signals coming up into our body can be connected with our emotions, right? Emotions can have physical parts to them as well as those mental parts. And we would propose in psychology that you do learn to pay attention to those because paying attention, understanding and then processing those emotions is really important to your self-care. But then there's also the cognitive, right? So it's complex, you know. So this is your thinking processes. Are you overstimulated? Are you bored? You know, where are you on that mental processing or intellectual processing spectrum? We know if people are bored, they lack meaning, they lack purpose, and I think a lot of us during the lockdown had periods of time where we just felt so disconnected. We have to take care of our thoughts, our mental thoughts as well, and we have to tap into what are essentially our values, our core beliefs about ourselves, our dreams, our aspirations, what we want to do with our life, and really start to pay attention to what gives us a sense of meaning. So self-care is making sure we've got the right types of things going on in our life and that we're plugging into things that are resonant with those core beliefs and values, and if we can, being part of something, I think, well, for me, that's a bit socially bigger than what we are, part of the greater good. So this is the last part of self-care, which is the social world. You know, all of this intrapersonal stuff, the cognitive, the emotional, the physical, this all happens at an individual level, but, you know, no person is an island. We're all, you know, surrounded by each other and we live in a complex social world. So self-care also means that connecting with that external social support group or who's our tribe, you know, having really meaningful interpersonal relationships, people that we know we can call on if we need to talk to someone, that we can share our secrets with, people that have got our back. And then also maybe being part of a bigger social, mission or purpose, whatever that might be for an individual's identity. So all of these things, when we talk about self-care, it's paying attention to all of these different facets and understanding how they interact. And for each individual, that's different. So what's right for me is not going to be right for you, and vice versa. But that's a long answer, right, to that question. But that's kind of how I think about self-care.
That's amazing. I guess what we were thinking about in the kind of conceptualization of this project was the idea of, I suppose, individualized self-care and this idea of communal self-care, which you hit on so perfectly, of this social. And my original thought of going into it was, well, are we going to find out that actually the social is more important than the introspective part? But I guess what you're saying is it all plays a part.
Yeah, and at different points in your life, different bits will come in and out of focus. So there'll be a particular issue for you, maybe it's a relationship issue. So the social interpersonal stuff will be pretty, pertinent. And then at other times it might be about you've got a physical health problem, so you really want to hone in on that. So I think it's about getting the balance right for you, and allowing those things to come in and out of focus, and to spend the time each day where you kind of just do a little bit of a check-in and be reflective. Where am I in all of those different spaces? Because sometimes they might be working against each other, right? And that's when we start to feel a bit of what we would call intrapsychic conflict. Things aren't congruent for us. There's some dissonance, and so we're struggling a bit with our well-being and our sense of self and what we're doing. And that's really important to listen to as well, because that's a learning opportunity, right? We can begin to think, well, what's life teaching me here about myself and what's going on for me? So it's really just the paying attention. Allowing it to be a fluid thing, allowing it to change, and being responsive to those things, and reflective and understanding, rather than just reacting. Giving yourself that space to think and understand, what's really happening for me, and how am I going today? You can reflect at the end of the day, and so that's an important, if you like, discipline or practice for maintaining your self-care.
There is so many parts that are kind of interconnected. And I guess when we think about things in a way that are related to like a social media aspect of things, how does the way that you view self-care and that practice of it, how do you think that relates well with the self-care industry as a whole? Because it feels like those things almost work kind of at each other.
And that's absolutely right. So that's that, we talked about that incongruence or that, dissonance. So the self-care industry is constantly bringing forward new things that we can do to better look after ourselves. And some of them have got a scientific research base and others haven't. And so that's the first thing, how much evidence is there that this thing really is going to be helpful? And then, of course, you're going to get different reports from people. So some people will say, this really works for me, or, social media will portray something as being very desirable, but actually maybe it isn't for you. And so I think the guide really to navigating what is a really, full space of stuff is to be in touch with yourself and that self-awareness. Because really it's you that has to drive this. There's no product or thing that the industry is going to provide us with that's going to do the self-care. It's as advertised, it's self-care.
To do it yourself.
Do it yourself.
DIY.
And you have to make a commitment to yourself, which means you're kind of saying, you know what, I'm worth it. I'm worth doing this for. And how I do it is really up to me. No one knows myself as well as I know myself. No one knows what it's like to be truly in my shoes except for me. And so I'm probably the best judge, not some external,
Yeah.
provider of a product,
Yeah.
at knowing if something's right. And if, after investigating whatever it is that
Yeah.
social media is wanting to sell me or show me, and I think it's got some merit and I think it sounds like it's resonant, well, fine, give it a go. And if it works, it works. But if it doesn't, then don't be afraid to say, you know what, I don't have to be dragged into the social norm here that everybody's doing this, so therefore I've got to do this if it's really not working for me. And I like that question, it's used a bit, but how's that working for you? How's that working for me? If it's not working, then why am I doing it?
I love that there is that openness to research and look into something and then try it. And then it is about having that kind of look back on things and going, well, is this actually working? And if it's not working, then maybe we should do something about it. And I think there are probably a lot of people who are just doing it because it produces content, or it gets clicks, or it does something like this, or it pays the bills to some extent. Tricky little thing to navigate through there, I suppose, for the people who are already making a career out of this. But I think that's really great advice. How does something like a placebo effect play into this?
So a good scientific study will take account of the placebo effect, so they'll, and sometimes that's hard to do with a behavioural study because it's obvious whether or not you're doing the intervention from a behavioural point of view, right? But in a classic example, it would be a drug that's got the active ingredient versus a drug that doesn't, and you can't tell because they look identical. And no, there's a power of expectation, right? Okay. So if I engage, let's say I want to try some new behaviour change strategy, it's a new fad that I want to give it a go, there's already kind of an element to which it'll be effective just because I'm committed to doing it, I've got an expectation that it's going to work, and I'm investing effort and energy. And look, the placebo effect when it comes to behavioural interventions, it's fine. We want you to be investing energy and effort, but we have to kind of remove that then from what above is the particular product that we're trying, adding that wouldn't be there already, that I can just do by engaging in a commitment to self-care. It's not often talked about, and I love the fact that you raise it, because good science, a good, if you are doing that, looking into something, looking for the placebo effect, have they even mentioned it? Have they talked about it? Have they measured it or accounted for it in their evidence that they're providing?
A lot of your research and a lot of the work that you've done has focused around music and how music works with the human brain. Are there any specific things or recommendations, or are there kind of things that we can check off to make a good music playlist? And I wonder whether there's a way to do that for, I don't know, a relaxation playlist or a working out playlist. How do we put music into our lives and make sure it's doing its fullest potential, I suppose?
There's been a lot of research on how we use music for regulating our emotions and our well-being. As an aside, before we talk about this in broader terms, there's this fun fact for you about, 30% of people who listen to music will do the whole cathartic thing. They'll listen to sad music and they'll say that makes them feel good, right? Which is a bit ironic because nowhere else do we listen to something sad to make ourselves feel good. But it's not everyone in the community, it's not the entire population, it's only about 30% of people who would use music in that way. So you see there's an individual element to this already. So what works for one individual isn't going to work for another, and a playlist is a very personal thing. And it may be that you change your tracks over time because you get a bit sick of the same thing over and over again. You'll have your favourites, some that cause chills and goosebumps and give you that kind of that buzz or high. Others that will bring you down and calm you down. Using music to help, it's a nice natural, if you like, remedy, or it's a non-invasive way of taking care of your emotional and your mental health. You don't have to take a pill. You can use music, and the first step is being aware of what are my emotions right now. How physically, how pumped up am I? Stressed out? How am I feeling physically and mentally? Cognitively, do I need to chill out? Am I overwhelmed? Or am I bored and needing to do something? So it's being in touch with ourselves and understanding that, and then selecting the music in response to that.
Yeah.
And sometimes people don't always make good choices, right?
Yeah.
So there are some studies that show in teenagers, for instance, they might make choices that actually take them further down. And that ain't great.
Yeah.
Right? Now we're using music and it's making things harder.
Yeah.
And there are some studies that show that music will incite a level of, kind of rage and might really fire people up in a way, or make them drive faster on the road and, increase kind of those road rage things. So we have to kind of be a little bit aware and know how music affects us.
Yes.
But as a general rule, tempo is obvious, right? If it's fast, if it's like a doof doof beat, you're not going to use that to relax.
Yeah.
You're going to use that to exercise and get motivated to, go on your run.
Yeah.
If you're really overwhelmed, we see this, mothers will use this with their babies all the time. If their infant's really, upset and crying or stressed, they'll use really meditative, lullaby, calm, singing music. It might be with the voice. If we're wanting to focus, different people will use different things, but for me, it can't really have any words or lyrics, because all of a sudden now I've got a parallel processing stream going on and I'm focusing on that and this, and that's not going to work. Whereas other people might say, oh, that doesn't worry me. So I think you have to experiment a bit for yourself and really build your own playlists. And what I find is that, I have to have some turnover and be constantly adding and moving things around. And so what I used to listen to versus what I listen to now, it's quite different.
Yes.
So your relationship with music over time changes as you change. The other fun fact actually is that try singing when you're angry.
Oh, okay.
It's really hard to do.
I can imagine.
And it's really good at helping you calm down.
Wow.
So when you're really angry, striking into a song, bursting into a tune, seems like the last thing that you want to do. But actually, once you do it, it really is a good regulator for anger. You can use it really situationally. You've got your buds in, nobody cares. It's a really immediate way for managing your mental health.
And I suppose that idea of singing really resonated with me. I work at a children's hospital. And seeing mothers particularly hum and sing to children is kind of amazing, to see the heart rate monitors directly attached go from 180, 190 down to 150, 140. And it's amazing to see that comparison can still happen when we're all adults, and it can still kind of calm us in this self-soothing way.
That's exactly right, self-soothing. And it's an inbuilt biological capacity, just like language. We all can speak and grow up and do that. So too with singing, and there's a study showing that infants in neonatal intensive care units, if their mums come in every day and sing through the humidity crib, they'll have shorter stays in hospital and leave sooner. But also, what's really cool is that the auditory system in the fetus is the earliest to develop of all the kind of this, to be more fully developed of the sensory systems. And so the fetus can really hear by about, the end of the second, beginning of the third trimester. It can't hear all the frequencies because it's surrounded in a sack of fluid, but the core elements of the mother's voice get through. And so there's been these really nice studies showing that when infants are born, that they will show recognition and respond to songs that their mother sang while they're in utero, above and beyond those that their mother didn't sing. So there'll be certain ways that you can already be using song for soothing an infant or yourself, through that process. And singing in a collective, so singing in a group, is a really important skill that we do less of now, right? We've kind of lost a bit of that. Although
few and far between.
been hard on the internet to sing on a choir because everyone's in a different room, and hopefully as people start to come back out of lockdown, you know, they'll rejoin those community choirs and groups that were really building up a lot of momentum pre-pandemic. It's a powerful tool for social bonding, so groups that sing together, it helps them bond, and that's been well shown. And if you think about, you know, football teams, they sing together. There are all sorts of activities where we use singing to bring that social connection and belonging, and we need more of that right now.
Yes.
You know, more singing.
More singing, please, more singing. I guess one of our final questions that I have for you today is, what do you think your thoughts are on the relationship between social media as a whole, I suppose, and mental health? How does the social media industry, could be directed from a wellness industry, could be a little bit broader in just the grand scheme of things?
It's mixed, isn't it? It's complicated. That's a really good and complex question. And I don't think we have definitive evidence, right? Because it's a hard thing to test too.
Yes.
But some general reflections might include this idea that, you know, at one level, social media is really great for connecting people, right? So you can all get on your Facebook or Instagram or whatever sites and share stories, share images, and it's been a way for people to stay connected and in each other's lives, and particularly during lockdown when you can't be in each other's lives in any other way. So, you know, it can be really used as a force for good. But equally it can be used as a force for not so good, right?
Yes.
And so in and of itself as a tool, it's just a tool. It's the people using it that, you know, we really need to think about. And I guess we see the worst side of social media with the public shaming and the people getting cancelled and people then feeling completely ostracised, that really having a big effect on their own sense of self, maybe thinking, gosh, I can't live anymore because I've had this happen to me, and it leading to really, you know, very sad outcomes. And I think we've seen that that's the kind of the wicked end, where it can influence or be part of a process that can make a person much worse in terms of their mental health. This is again where we need to get good at understanding how we use it as an end user, because I mean they're collecting data on us all the time, and the, you know, the product is our attention, right? How much do we want to live our life attending to this thing versus all the other things that we could be doing in a given day? Balance is a good idea. You know, staying connected and using it in positive ways that might help enhance that social self-care. Terrific. But if you get to a point where you think, you know what, this is really starting to detract from my life, it's taking away from my self-care of my physical health, it's, you know, instead of going for a run, I'm sitting here on Facebook all day. Well, maybe it's not so helpful now, and maybe I need to step back from that and regroup a bit, reprioritise. Or if I'm finding that there's a lot of negative comments or things that I'm reading that make me feel worried about the world or sad about the world, perhaps there's a little bit too much bad news coming down my
timeline,
and I need to balance that out because there's a lot of good news happening every day as well. And you know, the social media feed is directed at the things I attend to, so I get this very self-fulfilling prophecy about the world, and it can bias that cognitive, you know, aspect to my well-being. So all of a sudden I get a bit of a distorted view of the world, that all this terrible stuff is happening because of the, you know, the attention and the feed mechanism of social media. So making sure that you expose yourself to different views, not become too polarised or just reinforce one view. And there was this really cool study done not that long ago which talked about the importance of interactions with strangers, right? You know, back in the pre-pandemic world where you'd sit on a bus and you'd talk to the person next to you, not just be on your phone. You'd actually have a conversation, or you're on a train or a plane or wherever, you're walking down the street. And all of a sudden you're being exposed to someone who's had a very different life history, more than likely, than yours, who has a whole different set of ideas about the world and who is equally getting through life and doing okay. And all of a sudden some of those views, whether they be stereotypes or perhaps misinformed beliefs, are challenged. And you go, and there's living proof of someone who's doing that, and they seem to be doing all right. So making sure we expose ourselves and challenge ourselves, and think about things through multiple lenses, and understand that there are multiple ways or perspectives on things. That really keeps our cognitive well-being a bit more rounded and well balanced, and that helps us in terms of our self-care. So am I exposing myself to enough new and different stuff, or am I just getting a bit bogged down in the same feed and reading the same thing over and over again, and now I'm developing a very kind of myopic view of the world? This takes a bit of commitment and effort, right? Because it's really easy just to go with the feed because it's all done for you, and you pick up your phone and there it is. And you know, I'm equally guilty of this, and then I think, hang on a minute, I've got to stop doing this. And then, you know, Twitter will message me and say, oh, we miss you. Where have you been? We want you back. And it's like, I don't think you do, actually. No. You just want my attention, and I'm doing this right now. You know, so it's being able to put those boundaries from that view of self-care, building out what we want in our life, how we want to spend it, and how we want to look after ourselves and the other people in our life. Because, of course, the fundamental thing here too is in order to be able to connect and care for others, fundamentally we need to be able to care for ourselves.
Keeping that diversity in there, but at the core of it, we do need to look after ourselves to be able to
interact and be part of the community. And so building a healthy community involves us each self-caring and taking ownership of our own stuff, and then that gives us some freedom once we do that to then be available and open to others and to be able to connect with others, because we're looking after ourselves. And so when we engage in a relationship, we're not looking for what this is going to do for me in terms of caring for me, how is this going to support me and my problems. It's more, well, I'm taking good care of myself, and I've now got that space and sense of well-being that I want to be part of, building something bigger, and I can interact with others and find out about their worlds, and that can enrich my life rather than take care of my problems, if you understand, you know, the difference. It's easier said than done, but this is the idea.
Oh yeah, it's a process. It's taking it day by day.
It's one step at a time, and prioritising and that balance, and you can't do it all at once. So deciding what your focus is going to be, it's whatever works for the person.
Yeah, it truly is so individualised, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's a wonderful note to end on, I think. I've got one last question, and I ask it to everybody. Okay. Do you think it's possible that I will become the most famous wellness influencer by Saturday 5 p.m, which is Tuesday at the moment? Or do you think this is kind of a positive illusion that I've put onto myself to help me get there?
Wow, well, I love your ambition. and, you know, I love the optimism. So anything's possible. Great. I guess it depends if you've got some profound thing that you're about to release that might take the world by storm. The other thing I would say is that there's a kind of a good way of thinking about our expectations and our ideal and our real.
Yes.
Right? And so it's good to have not too large a gap or not too small a gap. Yep. But our well-being, how we feel about ourselves, is all about the degree of the gap. So if I was to say, you know, by next Wednesday I'm going to be Prime Minister, we know this is not going to happen. And I probably don't really want to be the Prime Minister, but even so, if I did, you know, that gap's too big, it's unrealistic.
Yeah.
And in a sense, I'm setting myself up to fail.
Yes.
And my well-being come next Wednesday, which would be tomorrow actually, you know, my well-being will suffer, because if I really believed that was, you know, something I needed to do, I've kind of set myself up for a hit. Whereas if I moderate my expectations and do, you know, baby steps, maybe I want to join a political party. Well, maybe I can do that by tomorrow if this is something I want to look at. And then at the end of that day, I'll say, oh, well, you know, I've actually done something. I've done that realistic and feasible, and I've succeeded in that. And then from here, the next step is. So it really depends for you, you know, what that would take and how big a gap it is. Yeah. And if it's too big a gap, then the idea is make it a bit smaller. Yeah. But otherwise, go for
it. Manage your expectations, but also go for it.
Yeah, give it a go if you really think it's on.
Thank you so much for today.
Oh, it's been fun.
I feel very humbled. I feel very lucky to be able to have had this beautiful conversation with you.
Thank you.
I think that everyone who is watching this has probably learned a heck of a load of stuff as well. Which is
hopefully it's been useful. Yeah.
Which is really useful. Yes, I guess all I want to say is thank you. Is there anything exciting that you're working on at the moment?
Yeah, we're working on a bunch of things, but I think one of the things, I've got a PhD student at the moment who's working on this idea of karma mutta, which is this sense of, you know, transcendence that music can bring, the goosebumps and being part of something bigger and connected and belonging. And so I think that's exciting. Because that research will help us understand that a little bit more and how we can use that to improve people's lives. And then the other thing that we're doing is looking quite differently, is looking for genes for singing ability. And we're working with large families of naturally good singers, and we've been testing people in the family and looking at their pitch accuracy in their singing and seeing if it runs through families and what degree might be heritable and what might be environmental. So that's exciting because we're making good progress with that. They're just two, and there's a bunch of studies going on in my lab, and that's a whole other conversation.
Oh, brilliant. Well, I look forward to hearing some of the outcomes of them. They sound fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
Beautiful. We're going to wrap it up there. As per usual, do all of the good things. Give us a like. You can subscribe if you like. Let us know if you've perhaps learned anything today. I know I have. Let us know in the comments below. But apart from that, thank you so much. We'll see you in the next video.